welcome to Athens City Council. This evening we will be meeting in council committees. The meeting will be called to order by the City Council President, who will then pass discussion over to a respective committee. The chair of the committee will introduce the discussion topics and provide an overview of the issues at hand. If needed, members of the administration will offer brief statements to provide further context. We will then welcome input from the community. Any citizens who wish to speak will be asked to state their name and address, both verbally and on the sign and sheet located at the podium. Individuals will be given one opportunity to share their thoughts, and the committee chair will have the authority to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Once all citizens have had the opportunity to speak within the 15-minute time period allotted for total public participation on each topic, the public comment portion will be closed. Council committee members will then continue their deliberations. There may be additional questions directed to the administration during this time. When the discussion on the topic concludes, the chair will indicate whether legislation will be introduced at the next regular session of council and move on to the next item on the agenda or adjourn the committee if their work is complete. The next committee chair will then call their committee to order, proceeding in the same manner as before. Once all committees have adjourned, City Council will conclude for the evening.
Good evening. It's Monday, October 27th at 7 p.m. This is a meeting of Athens City Council Committee night. This is the evening where the committees of council meet to discuss topics and legislation before it comes before the regular session of council to be voted on. Tonight, we have 3 committees that will be meeting: City and Safety Services, Planning and Development Committee, and the Finance and Personnel Committee. I'm the pro tem tonight. Our President of Council, Sam Crowell, is acting mayor. The procedure will be that when a committee is called, those members of the committee will remain here at the dais, and other members of council will retire to the audience seats. So let's get on this. So we'll have our City Services Committee meet, and that is chaired by Member McCary with members Reisner, Thomas, and Swank. Will remain at the dais, and the others may sit wherever they like. And I will turn it over to the chair of the committee, Member McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. Our City and Safety Services Committee has just 2 agenda items this evening, and we'll begin with a presentation on our Athens Soil and Water Conservation District, presentation on city-wide stormwater workshop. And we are fortunate to have with us Teresa Caldwell, and we'll be learning a lot this evening.
Thank you very much. As you said, I'm Teresa Caldwell. I'm the Education Coordinator for Athens Soil and Water Conservation District. Tonight I'm wearing a little bit of a different hat. I do have some handouts that I'd be glad to give to you regarding the workshop. But to address this, I would like to just let you know that for the last 9 years, yes? Excuse me, let me pull that. No problem at all. And here, this also. Okay. All right. I'm passing out to you a letter that actually just explains a little bit about the background of the workshop that we want to do, the reasons for it. As you can see there, I, for the last 9 years, have been your stormwater educator, okay, in case you are not aware of that. I am tonight requesting your assistance as City Council to help us promote a comprehensive stormwater workshop within the city and for the city citizens. In the past, we've addressed various educational components of the MS4 permit, which is held jointly by the City of Athens as well as Ohio University. Ohio University actually does their portion given the ground that they have, but since it's within, much of it is within the city limits, they do have to coordinate with your environmental coordinator for what's going on within the city limits. The education portion of the permit entails 3 of the 6 minimum control measures, in other words known as MCMs. These include city's educational responsibilities regarding stormwater management and good housekeeping covered under the permit. To date, we have annually performed several things on behalf of the city. Those numbers are used to be sent to Ohio EPA at the end of each calendar year to let them know exactly how we have been coming into compliance with the permit. So we have classroom and field programs, you can see there, rain barrel and rain garden workshops. Annually, the Ohio River Sweep on the Hocking, it includes about 5 miles along the Hocking River within the city limits. Waterfest, which is a 3rd grade event that we put on, and displays at the Athens County Fair, the Paw Paw Festival, and Pollution Prevention Week, which is in partnership with Ohio University. We also do storm drain markings, and I have in the past provided training for the city employees and contractors that are going after a permit to actually build within the city limits. So you may or may not know that I recently, in 2025, received an Ohio Environmental Education Fund grant from Ohio EPA. This grant, under this grant, we now have a comprehensive library of Ohio EPA materials, which are sanctioned by Ohio EPA for employee and contractor training. And so we want to put together a workshop using some of this materials and we need your help supporting that workshop. I received grant letters from, these are support letters from Athens Garden Club, the Athens Chamber of Commerce, and the OSU Extension Master Gardeners, just to name a few. Okay, these organizations will receive an individual invitation. By the way, this workshop is in fact part of that grant to provide a comprehensive understanding of the MS4 permitting within the city. And so we are looking for your support for that. I have also brought with me 2 brochures that were paid for by the grant. One I developed myself with the support of Ohio EPA, and the other one is a spotlight on stormwater. So I want to make sure that all the members of council get these as well. So that's what I'm requesting of you guys tonight. I'm hoping that you will take the flyer that you see there and present it to your constituents in your ward because, you know, in the past when I advertise, I often get a handful of people, but I really feel that this information is extremely important for all the citizens, all the residents of the city of Athens. If we should get the citizens to come on board as far as best management practices for stormwater reduction and pollution prevention, it will go a long way to helping the city come in compliance with the Ohio EPA permitting. Okay, any questions? Yes.
A couple more groups. You may have them on your list. You said among others. Could we get south to Athens and Bloom and Project Plant?
Okay, I could send those. If I can get contact information for them, be happy to send them an individual invitation. They did not, the 3 that I mentioned here were organizations that actually gave me a letter of support a year ago to be sent to Ohio EPA so that we would be awarded, you know, hopefully awarded this grant. The other things that I did with this grant, just for your information, is that I saw in my programming a lot of training that wasn't done prior to career entering. And so I approached the heavy construction class at Hocking College. Actually gave that presentation this morning. Those students come out knowing a lot about heavy equipment operation, but don't really realize that should they decide to do any kind of operation of that equipment within the city of Athens on a construction site, they will be asked to comply with permitting. And some of them don't even know about it. So I also have done 4 programs and have 2 more to do at Ohio University. I've had quite a response from professors at OU. So I have 2 more to do there, so it'll be 6 in total. It's way beyond what I request or told them that I was going to do with the, with the grant. I've also presented to Tri-County Construction, and I have already a date set up for Envirothon and FFA students at Athens High School. So we have a lot of programs, and the materials that were provided for me by the grant money, but has been very, very effective in training them, because it's not just me standing up there and telling them something. I actually have materials that are sanctioned for this training by Ohio EPA.
2 other quick questions. On this event on the 9th, would it be possible that you could also stream that for those who may not be able to attend?
I don't have the capacity to stream it, but if the city can arrange for that, that'd be great. I don't have the capacity to be able to do that, but I'd be happy to have the city do it.
Since it's going to be down at City Rec, perhaps, hate to put him on the spot, but the acting mayor might be a good person to ask about that.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to have that placed on a virtual, because there's a lot of people, you're right. By that time, it's going to definitely be dark by 5 o'clock. And so many of our seniors in the area don't like to go out after dark. And so that would be excellent to be able to provide this for them if they don't want to go out after dark.
Okay. The second question is a little more technical. You mentioned these places that will be asked to comply. Where or who has the teeth to make sure that that happens? Because we have significant stormwater issues here in the city.
We are not a regulatory body as far as Soil and Water Conservation District, but those inspections for compliance will actually be done by your environmental coordinator. And your environmental coordinator is the one that would be responsible for, giving them a heads up as far as whether they're in compliance or not.
Director Stone, is that would that fall under the position that was just posted?
It would, more the code office.
Okay.
The person that is using this program is designated as the environmental coordinator, but in absence of them, the code office can enforce these. It's all in Title 5.07 is where the stormwater quality regulations are in the city, and if you want to peruse that, you can see what the teeth are for enforcement. Additionally, there's EPA state level violations as well that we
Okay, great. Thank you.
have to deal with.
Let's go ahead and use this as an opportunity to segue to the administration for any additional comments or questions for our presenter on this topic.
I just think Stormwater does a great job. Teresa's taught a lot of people about the stormwater quality, and we're very thankful for their hard work.
Terrific. Before you leave, let's check with questions and comments from members of the public who are here, and then we'll come to council for additional questions.
Can I ask them a question?
Sure, and then it looks like we might have at least one question. And for anyone who does have a question from the audience, please make sure that you ask it from the podium so that we can hear you. And but first, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Well, my question is, how many in the audience know what an MS4 city is? Okay.
MS5, MS6,
just for you to know, please come to the workshop if you can, because we got our direction from Ohio EPA back in 2016. We are on our second round of the permit. It's a 5-year cycle, and we are on our second round. So we have been in MS4 City for quite a while. but we're looking for the public to help us come in compliance. Okay, so thanks.
We might need you back in a moment, but
Okay.
let's go ahead and have our first question or comment from the public.
I'm Sylvia Spellness. I live at 87 University Estates Boulevard. I have a quick question. We're having a West Side Community Association meeting on Wednesday. Do you have more of those to hand out?
I brought some extra. I knew that there were 9 members of council, but there are some extra. If you want those, I can always get more.
Okay,
You know, I'll make sure you get a business card before.
Thank you.
You know. and
well, if you
just-
have some of those pamphlets right now, I could make copies if I couldn't have any
Okay.
time.
This one right here is actually a booklet,
Yeah,
so it's quite a few pages, but you're more than welcome.
I could at least hand one out if I,
Yeah.
because, Wednesday's real close.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate
Okay.
it. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. If our next member of the public would introduce himself.
Hi, Michael Wood, Highland Avenue. I just wanted to say briefly, first, thank you to Teresa, who has come and done a number of talks for folks in the Third Ward about these things. She's done an amazing couple of presentations for us, including a walk and talk in our neighborhoods with folks about rain gardens, which has been exceptional. Also, Steve Adams, the former environmental coordinator, who has moved up the chain, I believe, in a way, has done an amazing job. The water folks, the work that they've done with the MS4 has been incredible. So these are great programs, and thank you, Teresa, for doing more of them and broadening them out.
Beth Clodfelter, South Shannon Avenue. I have a pretty specific question for you, Teresa, if you don't mind, though I really did like your presentation.
Thanks.
I am someone who would like to get a rain barrel, and I've heard a lot of other people do that too. Is there someone in town who installs them?
And if Teresa could come back to the podium, we'll get that answer. Thanks.
Annually, we annually do 2 rain barrel workshops. We do that, it's a 55-gallon rain barrel, food grade. It's never had anything in it but food grade. It comes from Pepsi bottling, just the syrup. It'll smell like Pepsi. But you usually will come to a workshop, and then we will cut the barrel to your specifications, what you need for your particular situation, and then we give you instructions on how to install it. It's not super hard to do, and I do thank City Council for allowing that to happen, because in case you don't know, there are communities that will not allow you to install rain barrels. So I do thank you for that. So we would be glad to give you instructions on that, and I don't think that it would be too hard for just anyone to figure out how to do that. Okay? You're welcome.
If you would remain there, Teresa, for just a moment while we check with committee members for any questions or comments. All right, thank you so much. We
Okay.
appreciate it.
Any further information, I do have, part of what I got with the materials was actually some like 30-second advertisements about stormwater management that I thought perhaps I would make available to City Council to place on your channel, so that we could get the word out that way as well. So I'll make sure that I get in touch with Deborah and get her the information and make sure that she'll get it all to you guys so that you know what you're putting out there.
Okay, and would you
Okay.
just recap for us the asks are for council and the city government channel to help promote awareness of the workshop?
Yes.
And additional things that you need from us?
Yes, for the audience, the workshop is going to be December the 9th. It's going to be at the Athens Community Center in Room A. It will begin at 6 o'clock and conclude at 7:30. And if I could have the city council members help me promote this through your individual wards and those at large, it would really, really help us. I would like to get a lot of the community members out.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Micah. Teresa, would it be okay, there are 3 very active neighborhood Facebook pages. Would it be okay to simply post this? Or do you have
Absolutely.
something that you would prefer otherwise?
Absolutely.
That'd be fine?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, committee members, and thank you to our presenter. We'll now move on to our second agenda item for City and Safety Services, which is the purchase and disposal of a front-end loader truck, also sometimes called a bucket loader truck. And I will ask the administration for a quick bit of background on this before moving on. Director Stone.
Thank you, Member Carey. So, the loader that the street crew uses to load out salt primarily, but other bulk material, is a 1997 model with over 7,500 miles on it. We really needed a new one for a long time, but we really don't need a new one because we don't, we're not building highways, right? So we just need a newer one. And the team has managed to find a used one for $140,000, and then we'll trade in the old one, so ultimately the outlay will end up being about $120,000. And there's a provision in the Ohio Revised Code that allow for communities to buy used equipment without bidding, and we've done this before, like when we did the Leafer before. So what I'm asking you to do is authorize the disposal of the existing one and the purchase of a new one, and authorize the expenditure.
All right, thank you. That was pretty straightforward. We will check with members of the public for questions and comments about our bucket truck needs. All right, on to committee members. Any questions or comments on this agenda item? Member Swink.
Director Stone, you said 1997, so we got 28 years out of that one. If we were to go out and buy a new one today, just in comparison to what we're going to pay, what are we talking about, $250,000?
At least, probably $300,000.
Wow.
The one we found is a 2022 with 350 hours on it. So, I think we can get a long time out of that piece of equipment. It's in very good shape. And so this is something that, we've had an eye out for a little while. And, this is probably a needed purchase.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? All right, seeing none, that concludes City and Safety Services for the evening.
Thank you, Member McCary. Next on the agenda is Planning and Development Committee. That's chaired by Member Swank and Members Thomas, Wood, and Spielness.
My chance to get up here. She's all done it by herself. By yourself. All right, tonight we have 4 items on the agenda. The first one, conditionally permitted use in R3 and B3 zones of temporary, to allow temporary shelters. This is a recommendation that has come from the Planning Commission. There has been conversation about this in the context of recommendation 2504, temporary shelters at the gathering place. And one of the things that came out of that Member Spellness kind of led the charge on, so to speak, was identifying some criteria that would have to be met for this. And what we're discussing tonight is the primary criteria, and that is that, I'll read the whole thing and then just the part 8 here. Temporary housing shelters, housing structures of a temporary nature that are not affixed to the property and that do not contain kitchen or bathroom facilities. 1 sink and 1 toilet must be available for use within 200 feet for every 3 temporary housing shelter units. Here's the part that has been, will be considered next week. Said shelters must be under the supervision and care of a licensed local health welfare agency. That is the big difference. So let's go to the administration first, then the public, and then members of council, and probably start when we get there with Member Spellness, who came up with the wording for this for us. Director Stone. Okay. Members of the public. Okay. Members of council. Oh, come on up. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Name and address, please.
I want to address the B3, R3. This is the
In general, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Got it.
Yeah, that's the umbrella over that covers, and this is just part of it.
Jack Stoffer, Elmwood Place. When I review our zoning map, there seems to be quite a bit of R1 that faces B3 on the far east side and some of the near east side. What about those people's view out their front doors and windows? What about the decline in their property values? What about their feelings of safety and the public perception? There also appears to be a similar concern about R1 facing the R3. Your comprehensive plan includes words, "We will enhance our neighborhoods to maintain a high quality of life," to include a variety of housing choices. 1. This will neither enhance or even maintain the current quality of life for these properties. Huts and tents does not enhance our neighborhoods. Are they housing choices? 2. What about the current residents that will walk or drive by these homeless encampments? Not a good look or feel for our residents or visitors to Athens. 3. Mr. Stone emphasizes that B3 might be too limited and suggested B2 and R3. I guess we settled on B3 and R3. With the Sunset Motel project and all the low-income apartments new and on the way, this would seem to be able to take care of any existing needs for Athens City and/or Athens County. Let HAPCAP provide for the other counties in their own counties and keep our concerns local. We don't need to encourage other unfortunate souls to our town where the living is easy. People, especially desperate people, take the path of least resistance. This will just put a further strain on our churches and taxpayer-funded social services, not to mention the possibility of driving up our crime even further. This is about quality of life for the current residents and taxpayers of our town, Athens. This attempt comes from the Planning Commission, all mayor appointments. The BZA are all mayor appointments. The Service Safety Director serves at the pleasure of the mayor. To ask the public to believe that this is a check and balance is naive. Protect the folks that elected you. Please don't further reduce our quality of life. Please do not move forward on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Just Mike,
Yes, sir.
point of order real quick. President Pro Tem Reisner, you are still President Pro Tem, even though you're not on the committee. We need somebody to manage the clock, which is you.
Well, that's why we had a clerk.
No wonder Vinton County always won those basketball games. You were running the clock.
So my name is Rob Delich. I live here in the city of Athens, 124 Morris Avenue. I am speaking here tonight from my experience serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals for the city of Athens for almost 4 years now. Time flies. I'm currently the chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. So because the Board of Zoning Appeals plays a really important factor in this ordinance, it's, like Jack just mentioned, a check and balance. And it's exactly what it's there for. And let me describe a little bit about the Board of Zoning Appeals, because most people probably don't even know what it does. So I pulled some information together from the Ohio Revised Code and other legal documents to try and demonstrate what the Board of Zoning Appeals would do in this kind of situation in particular. So first of all, let's start off with the first check is that the Service Safety Director reviews and approves a proposed conditional use of temporary shelters in the city of Athens, and that meets basic criteria, including the one sink, one toilet must be available for use within 200 feet for every 3 temporary housing shelters. And then, I think not officially amended yet, but there's a potential here also for that to include supervision and care of a licensed local healthcare welfare agency. So this initial review prevents any frivolous proposals going before the BZA. Additionally, if approved by the BZA, there's also an annual review of the project by the Service Safety Director. So, and then if a proposal comes forward and the Service Safety Director approves it, meets the requirements that are in the ordinance, then the BZA would hear the case in a public hearing, advertised to the public, and will take public input both via email, letter, and live comments during the meeting. The BZA hearing is a legal proceeding. Unlike a public hearing before City Council, we actually have protocol, have to deliberate carefully based on evidence and testimony. We cannot act arbitrarily, as the proposed use must be consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the zoning code. The BZA must consider relevant factors such as, for example, location, site plans, fencing, screening and security, buffering, lighting, hours of operation, adequate access, and in order to ensure that the conditional use is compatible with the surrounding area and it protects public health, safety, and welfare. So the BZA can also add its own conditions on top of what the ordinance says, on top of what code actually has, for any conditional use request that we deem necessary. So if it sees the need to further protect the public or mitigate impacts of the proposed project, then the board can apply additional conditions. So after approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals,
I'll give you one more minute as keeper of the clock.
with additional conditions, non-compliance by the property owner can trigger revocation of the conditional use permit by the city as well. So there's lots of checks and safeguards here. The Board of Zoning Appeals will deliberate carefully, as I mentioned, and is there to make a good decision here. That's in the taking into consideration the location, for example, the concerns of the previous speaker would be addressed in a public hearing with the Board of Zoning Appeals and taken into consideration. So this is not just going to be some rubber stamp if somebody wants to put a tents in a location. It will be carefully deliberated and determined that it is in the best interest of the city and the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening. Ken Micus, 34 West Washington. Just to address some of the things that were said a few speakers ago, he mentioned, concern for the citizens and taxpayers of the city. And I think the proposed legislation, with its checks and balances that were mentioned by Mr. Delich, and as written, having those, I believe, health and wellness organization overseeing whatever potential program, I think that can address safety concerns. But when it boils down to it, when people are unhoused, they want to be housed. There is a noted housing crisis in Athens for our current citizens and people who are from here. And people want to become able to be taxpayers. They want to contribute to their community and to the world around them. And I know I've spoken to a lot of members of different churches who are very interested in other ways that we can help address these issues in the community and as a society. So I think I'm all for this, just any opportunity that we have to help people become productive members of society only adds to safety and security.
Thank you. Any other members of the public this evening? Okay, members of council.
Chair, maybe have one more comment?
Yes, sir.
I do have just a couple additional points about this issue, about the other one that you're considering before the body. And I guess as the person charged with maintaining safety in the city, I don't know that there's a perfect solution. Certainly this is not a perfect solution, certainly not the other recommendation of the Planning Commission to allow it at the gathering place is a perfect solution. But it's an attempt to do something. I've sat at this table and I've sat in my office downstairs for the last couple of years and listened to a lot of opposition to efforts to do something. You name whatever the issue is, right? improve business climate, improve traffic safety location, improve, in this case, housing. And there's been people that are just opposed. It's easy to oppose something. It's harder to do something. We poured a body out of a storage unit 2 months ago. The dude was living in the storage unit. He'd been there for about 6 months. So you can imagine how fun that particular activity was. And so, I guess from my perspective, I think we can enforce the structures around this to keep it from turning into something out of control. But it's an attempt to solve a problem. John Morgan told the mayor last Friday that he was going to sue the city for spot voting for the other situation. And I've never backed away from a situation where somebody said they're going to sue me for trying to do something right. We've got attorneys for a reason, we've got lawyers for a reason, but you kind of ought to be careful in that, because the alternative is pass this particular piece of legislation and then citywide it's permissible, right? Or at least citywide in R3s and B3s with conditional permitted use, as Mr. Glass said. So, it ain't perfect. It really isn't, but it's an attempt to solve a growing problem, and I've seen it grow because there's just not enough houses for people. And there's certainly not enough affordable houses. So that's my take on the matter as the person charged with 17 cents. Thank you.
Back to the public, I guess.
Thank you, Micah McCary, 3 Windsor Place, Athens, Ohio. And I would just like to raise the point that I have heard concern that council members haven't spoken with the police chief to hear about police input on safety concerns for any of these housing measures. And I want to point out that our City Safety Services Director is the supervisor of our police chief, and invite anyone who has concerns about the fact that these conversations have happened to hear from Director Stone that the police are aware of these conversations, these proposals, and he would not be supporting them if it weren't for the fact that these issues have been discussed openly. Thank you.
Lorraine McCosker, Elmwood Place. I would like to throw my support behind this effort. I've lived in this city 22 years, and I've seen an increase in the unhoused. And just very concerning increase. And I think that as a community, we have a responsibility to support those around us who are less fortunate and that we can perhaps help. So we all do it in many, many ways. We contribute money. We try to support local nonprofits. I have worked with many people just as a volunteer, as a community member, who were unhoused and needed help. There are so many things we could be doing, and this is one of them. So I have seen unhoused people on the very street that Jack and I live on. That there's circumstances that lead them to that. So we're all in this together, and I think it's really critical. I'm proud of this community for doing this, for Mr. Stone to say what he said. And, we've lost people over the years. There was a man that used to sleep under the AC unit or the heating unit at the library in the snow. And there were people who lived on the bike path. So this isn't super new, but it has reached critical proportions. And we're going to be seeing an increase in this in the coming days with the decrease of funding from the federal government. We're on critical ground right now, and we have a responsibility as a society to help each other. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else from the, okay. Members of council.
Well, since I talked up quite a bit to support the ordinance to provide the huts by the gathering place, I suppose I ought to talk about this too. One of the things that I did when I first read this second ordinance is that I talked to Ginger at the gathering place. I would call her our resident expert, at least one of them. And there was some concern about the fact that there is, at the gathering place, experts to help with folks who are unhoused. And so having them there, having the huts there, just a few of them, at an opportunity to test and pilot, is this working? What can we do? What's the best way to serve these folks? How can we get them connected to services? Get them into a path of more stability. That really works. That makes a whole lot of sense in my mind. And by the way, if you haven't seen the screen around the parking lot, you can't see them at all anyway now. And I think it looks okay. So that brings us to this new one. And in the original language, there wasn't anything in the verbiage about that kind of supervision, because what the gathering place wants to do, assuming this passes, is vet the people who would be at the huts, knowing their history, knowing who they are, knowing their mental health, et cetera, behavioral health situation, so that they can make wise decisions about who this could advantage and how they can, and they're already being served. So, and by the way, for folks who don't realize this, our sheriff's department is within view of that parking lot. Like, if you can't find a safer place than that, I don't know what is. So anyway, but this didn't have that kind of language and supervision. So we at least wanted to add the sentence about supervision and care by a licensed facility. The concern I have is that I don't know where those places might be. So I have some mixed feelings about that, but I think that as I really trust the fact that our service safety director, and I really believe he's sincere and genuine, I think he's actually a really good guy. And Rob and the BZA, they are doing good work, and I trust that they are going to care about what happens with folks. So I think we have serious guardrails around this issue. So I think it's worth really taking it seriously and thinking it through. So I guess that's my...
Thank you. Member Thomas.
Yeah, I would echo, everything that Solveig said, and I appreciate Director Stone speaking up. I've supported the Gathering Place on their attempts and what we're working for there, and I support this. I appreciate the addition of the supervision and the licensed local healthcare welfare agency. I know that when we first discussed this, one of the things that the members of the Gathering Place were concerned about was that just opening this up anywhere could create problems, and they didn't want to see that happen. They want it to be a healthy, careful environment. It is not a free-for-all. If reading through the ordinance that we had originally, reading through what they've added to this, as Rob said about the BZA, they do a very good job. They have a very clear set of rules. If you follow BZA rulings, you'll find that they're not just making it up as they go along. It's very, very rigid. I would also say I did speak to the police, and I did reach out to the chief and spoke to him after it was pointed out a couple of times, mostly because I know the chain of command in the city, and I know that the mayor and the safety service director are above the chief, and I know that the chief will speak to them if he has concerns, because he understands the chain of command, and he's not going to come complain to council without going through his superiors. But I did reach out because I didn't think he should be dragged into it, but here we are, so we will address that. He had no concerns. He understands what's happening. He's worked with the Gathering Place before. He knows Ginger well, and if he had concerns, he will speak them. So we can just drop that from the complaints. And I would echo everything Director Stone said, that the same voices that are complaining about these have shown up in every single housing discussion. They've shown up to complain about LIHTC, not the right place. They've shown up to complain about the Sunset, which is now the saving grace, apparently, but it wasn't in the moment. They had big thoughts on how that was a terrible idea, the audacity. So they just don't want to see it there. They don't want to see it there. They didn't want to see these very things on Union Street, to the point that the building's being sold, and it wasn't even on city property or private property. It was county property. They don't want to see it, period. End of discussion. Not here, not there, not anywhere in the city. So I don't really want to hear not in this place anymore, because I counted in the last meeting, 7 people said that, plus the emails I have, plus what we heard at all the other LIHTC meetings. So it just gets very old to keep hearing, not here, just not here, not sure it's the right place, because it's very clear from those voices there is no right place. So those are all my thoughts.
Member Wood, any comments?
Well, I couldn't say anything better than what Jessica just did.
You don't have to.
I do have, so yeah, thank you for that. I do think there's a lot of this that ends up with, I just never want to see poor people. And that's kind of, that is what it is. So I'm glad that you spoke plainly about that and did that legwork. I'm also glad to find out that Andy Stone is a good guy. Glad we cleared that up. Had
Just
some
saying,
questions, but
I've told him that too.
Yeah.
We're talking about budget later. That's a good segue to a raise.
It's good to know he's a good guy. I did have 2 questions that I was curious about. One, for Director Stone, I think, if we believe that this does eliminate the spot zoning issue, and 2, I kind of wanted to follow up with Rob about times that the BZA has added more guardrails or other restrictions, because I was curious what those have looked like. So I don't know if that's appropriate or allowed. But those are clarifying questions that I think would be really interesting to hear if that's allowed.
So this would be a good time, I think, to talk about context and schedule. Well, let's do context first, and then we'll come back to schedule, okay? Ryan and whomever in there, I've got up on my screen what I need to show. Can get the right, I don't want to show that. How about, what are we doing wrong here? I have the zoning map up here. Boy, can I call for help?
Member Swake,
Yes, ma'am.
while we're working on that, can I maybe answer Member Wood?
Yeah.
From what I can recall, just off the top of my head, with BZA, they've added things, from when they were considering short-term rentals, like a sound monitor, or they can say, like, it must stay with, certain, with the owner of whatever, small things like that. I'm trying to think a really good example that might be really pertinent to this recently, but they can kind of put in almost whatever they want.
They've
would make
required
it-
owner occupancy, for
Yeah.
example. Yeah.
Yeah.
To get rid of that.
They could probably add reporting measures and things, I would guess.
Yeah, and I think I was also, that's very helpful. Thank you both. I was
had the
curious,
map
I
up
guess,
there,
if there were
only on
specific
my
things that
screen,
they had in mind in this case that they could illuminate, because I think that would also be helpful if so, while we're fixing things. So how was everybody's weekend?
I'm the only computer that has this on it.
I'll add in, has everybody voted? This is a voting weekend. There's early voting is open now. You can vote. It's important to vote in your off-year elections too, for your council candidates or other people.
Levies.
Levies.
Yeah, there it is.
One second.
Yep.
Let me try it
Okay.
again.
A lot of uncontested races, but still go vote.
Still to vote.
Just saying. Okay, here we go. So context. What we're talking about, the possibility of R3 and B3 zones. The red is a B3 zone. I'm out on East State Street. Purple part over here is city land, city rec and all that. You can see basically from the city limits, and I'll go way in. This is what's often referred to as the near east side, far east side. So all these businesses right along here, right next to yellow is R1 zones. Then we cross under the underpass, we just passed the mural. So all of this land, all the way up to May Avenue on the south side of East State Street. And again, all these yellow or R1 neighborhoods. R3, multifamily housing, all this brown. This is basically Ohio University land, all that brown. But you can also see when we get back to the B3, this is Stimson Avenue from Sonic all the way up to our latest vape store. In fact, on both sides. And again, up against an R1 neighborhood. And then we move out a little further, move down to the south side of town. This is Richland Avenue and Old 33, Pomeroy Road. Florinmore's right here. This is Coventry. This is often referred to as the south side. Remember Reisner's ward, Ward 2, again an R1 neighborhood. So that's what we're talking about in terms of the generally affected area. Then we get out here on Union Street, the fairgrounds, between Union Street and the river. That's all B3 also. So that's the context of the areas that are potentially affected by this. In terms of schedule, next Monday at 7 o'clock, we will have a public hearing. It's been announced in the paper. It will precede the regular session of council, and the public hearing will be devoted strictly to a discussion of allowing temporary housing in R3 and B3 zones. After that hearing, council will decide when and if to put this on the agenda. One concern I have, in fact, two concerns I have to do with said shelters must be under the supervision and care of a licensed local health welfare agency. Local. Let's say that we put one of these housing areas over here on the far east side, and I'm going to plunk it down right here in the vacant Donwood parking lot. And the agency that they contract with is way out on Columbus Road. Does that work? Last week we had 29 speakers. 20 spoke in favor of the Gathering Place's proposal, not Gathering Place's, the Planning Commission's proposal. 9 spoke against it. Of those 20 people, the number one selling point, consistent point, was the Gathering Place's almost 50 years of good service and the fact that they were right next door. But it was also mentioned that this is a pilot, So I think we're going to need a little bit more clarity on where this place needs to be located. Secondly, there are some things in here that are different in terms of requirements to get approval than what we are in the process of approving for the Gathering Place. We have some differences there, and the law director pointed that out very clearly in her in her opinion. Several weeks ago, when we were first discussing this, we heard from several members up here that probably going to need some more conversation on this. And without knowing what's going to be said next week in that public hearing, I'm guessing that we may want to bring this back before committee after that hearing to have a robust discussion, because after all, that is what a public hearing is for, is to gather opinions and then to reflect on those opinions. So those are some of my concerns right now. Again, where's that health and welfare agency going to be located? They're all not equal. We know that for a fact. They are not all equal. Some are as good-hearted as can be, and some are in it for money, and we all know that. And secondly, many of these places butt up against an R1 neighborhood, and that's a whole different story than what we're talking about with the Gathering Place uptown. Other members of the committee? Yes, sir.
I don't think that, I appreciate the note. don't think Ginger is in this to get rich or any other social service people. I think I still in the what's the uptown area? What's that zone?
Whereabouts uptown?
Court Street.
Court Street. Court Street is a different shade altogether.
It's B2D.
B2D,
Thank you.
not B2 to be determined, B2D. And that's that whole area there. That would not fall under this. Comments? Yes. Member Thomas? Yes.
I mean, we've been talking about this. Looking back, I have emails from June, from July, from August, from September. I think the public's pretty well informed. I think the point of the supervision and licensed local health welfare agency is part of the checks and balances of that plan, and that it also goes through the safety service director's office, and it also goes through the BZA. It's not just plopping down wherever. I don't think it gets much tighter than that. They're going to assess, Rob hit all the things that the BZA has to do. It has yet another public hearing. It has a lot of checks and a lot of ways to make sure it's being done correctly and well. The people that spoke against it last week, if they speak against a gathering place that's right next door and predated them by 40 plus years and will post-date them by probably another 40 years, it doesn't really matter. They're just against it. I don't think we should bring it back to committee. I think we need to carry it forward as we've been planning to, as has been on this, as we should have done months ago, in my opinion, and we continue in November.
So
this is just an attempt to push it into next year to cancel and start again, in my opinion.
No, we don't. Second, let me say this. If that is your opinion, you might as well not come next week, because you've already made up your mind on what. There you go.
I've heard from the public. I have emails from the public. I don't know what you want to, there you go, but you do it all the time, Alan. I don't think you should throw any stones here.
Oh, I'm going to throw bricks and rocks. What I'm saying is.
Go for it.
Wait a minute.
Go for it
Hold
100%, bud.
Stop. Hey, I'll handle this, okay? Let's just calm down and get the temperature down. Arguing amongst yourselves like this is not going to solve anything, so
You're right.
please.
So here's where I am right now. We have a public hearing next week, and we need to hear from that public hearing with open minds. You've already tipped your hand as yours is closed. I'm hoping the other 6 people will come here with open minds.
Alan, I'm just going to point out.
I have the floor right now.
Go for it. I will have it next.
When I recognize you, and if I recognize you.
You try that.
I live on the Far East Side, and there's the possibility that these could be put literally in people's backyards. I have yet to hear one person on the Far East Side by phone, email, or personal visit when I'm walking my dog in the neighborhood say, Alan, this is a good idea. The Gathering Place project is a pilot. I would like to see, because I'm assuming it's going to pass, I would like to see how that pilot goes. And during that 1-year period that we have before the service safety director will review it, according to what I've been told by the folks at the Sunset Motel, that property will be open. And there is a possibility of it housing anywhere between 40 and 70 to 80 people. I've talked to different people associated with that project, and I keep getting different numbers, but at least 40. So I'd like to see how Ginger's project goes. And excuse me, it's not your project, it's a Gathering Place. You're the leader, I respect that. How the Gathering Place project goes. And if it goes well, and we still need this because the Sunset Motel is full, then maybe this is the right thing to do. But it's a pilot project. I don't think it's appropriate to make the entire city, or at least the R3 and B3 zones, a pilot project. We have an organization, almost 50 years. When is the anniversary, by the way?
October 16th, 2026.
Next year, okay. About the same time that Athens Insurance gets their 100th anniversary, which we should recognize both. But a year from now, you just about completed a year. And if it goes well, and we need more space, then yeah, let's take a look at this. But when we're calling something a pilot, I have a very, very difficult time extending that pilot to the entire city, particularly on a road that has 31,000 cars a day, where an 84-year-old neighbor of mine recently got hit crossing on the right signal in a crosswalk, and now can barely play golf, which he plays 5 times a day. It's a busy place. And I could go on and on, having lived over there since 1983. But I'd like to see how this other project goes and how the Sunset Motel goes. And I would certainly like to sit here next week and listen to 29 speakers again in a public hearing, weigh in on their feelings about this project at this point in time. Other members of the committee. Member Thomas.
So first, I will come and listen to any and all discussion, and I always do. But it's not any secret that we've been talking about this since June, and I've been bringing it forward and questioning it and endorsing it. So that's not any different than anything else coming forward. I think it's pretty questionably ethically to keep trying to put it off and try and control a narrative and fearmonger of it's going to be in your neighborhood, it's going to be in your backyard, within these rules and stakes various levels of approval. Last I checked, there's not a random health agency sitting back on Jacobs Drive. But do you remember when all the housing went in for, is it Integrate? And it was quite the thing. Everybody was protesting. Everybody was NIMBY. Nobody wanted to see it. Not a single issue since then. Everybody gets afraid because people just keep layering it on. We can have the discussions, we can listen to everyone, that's completely valid, that's why we're here. So I will be here next Monday to listen to it. But to imply that my mind is closed because I'm not willing to shift where we are and where I've been and where all the emails we're getting, which far outnumber, the against, and nobody here had to send an email to their tenants, question that, suggesting the fear that they didn't have for the 2 or 3 years that they lived in that house until someone told them to be afraid. If you want to talk ethics and closed minds, we can go down that road, but I don't think it's going to be an enjoyable one.
Thank you. A couple points in response. If you check the police logs, there have been numerous police visits to Graham Drive. And secondly, and I'm not sure if it's the same person Mr. Stone was talking about, but the gentleman was taken out of the storage unit right there on East State Street.
I don't see how that makes my point less valid, but okay.
Okay, so we could go on and on and on. Any other thing from members of council? We will have this as a public hearing next Monday at 7 o'clock.
So I want to say, since I've been so supportive of what we've done, or what hopefully we're going to do with the gathering place and the huts, I cannot be here next Monday, so I'm going to miss this joyful experience of listening to everybody talk about this, just saying. But I have I believe strongly that we need to take steps, as Director Stone had said and has been mentioned. My only concern with this is I can't envision where they're going to go right now. Where exactly would it work? But I'd like to keep that door open for that few right places, and I think that's justifiable. So anyway, I'm not ditching out next week. I just can't be here. Have fun.
Ms. Stoffer, I see your hand, but by our rules, you can only comment us once, but next week at the public hearing, you can certainly speak at that point in time. Any other comments by members of council? Okay. Second item on the agenda. This is a recommendation that comes from the city administration that has been worked on for quite some time. And it deals with the, just a second for those who need to leave. Okay, second item on our agenda this evening deals with the Shade Tree Commission. As I said, this is a recommendation coming from the city administration. The administration has worked with the chair of the Shade Tree Commission, also has involved Ann Bonner, and just today I received communications from Athens and Bloom leadership and Project Plant leadership about these changes and the fact that it looks pretty good. But with that said, I will turn this over to Director Stone to give us some background and take us through the high points of this recommendation. Sure. Director Stone.
Thank you, Member Swank. So does everyone have the document?
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone's got the document, the clean version. Basically, we've kind of done an iterative approach here, and ultimately the goal of this effort, I note on the agenda that there is a proposal to amend Chapter 910 and 3702 next. The document that you have is reflective of all of those. So basically, all three agenda items on the remaining agenda items on the planning committee. There are, if you go down through the couple different things that we've recommended, some of it has to do with adding invasive species to the noxious weeds portion of the effort. And also to promote the pollinator program, but not allowing pollinators to have invasives that grow into the area. If you're going to do a pollinator program. If you get into the crux of starting really so I guess it'd be the second page of the document you have, Title 21, which is subdivision regulations. The Shade Tree Commission historically has been in a regulatory role. And this proposal is to go through and to modify the way that the Shade Tree Commission is written in the subdivision regulations, the Shade Tree Commission title, which is Title 33, the landscaping regulations, which is 37, and then Title 41, site plan review, and move it from a regulatory entity to an advisory entity, and have the Planning Commission replace the Shade Tree Commission as the entity that says yes or no. I think that we can actually enforce our shade tree regulations more, I've used the phrase nimbly, but ultimately better, because I think we can get information in the hands of the Shade Tree Commission earlier during the development review process this way, as opposed to wait for them to receive information like the Planning Commission does with a public hearing and not being able to discuss it as a body outside of the official meeting in this manner, and ultimately treat the Shade Tree Commission and the membership as somewhat like we do the departments, in that the departments right now, as soon as something comes across for permits, is evaluated by the code office to determine, is it a PUD, is it a Title 31, or 41 rather, is it just a standard zoning permit, is it a full-blown subdivision, and then get the information about it to them quickly, the same way it makes it to the police department, the fire department, and the engineering public works department to provide feedback on plans. And then ultimately the entity that says yes or no on the shade tree regulations will be the Planning Commission. And that's the crux of the specifics. We did go back and forth, myself and the chair, and I had some more relaxation of shade tree regulations in here that or some relaxation rather of some of the regulations, and based on the feedback from the commission, we pulled that. That's something that we had a robust discussion on it, and I'm supportive of the tree canopy we have in the city, and I want to make sure that we're not lessening our requirements. And so all of those changes, we went ahead and pulled those back out. I don't know if you shared the last track changes version of the modification as well. I know you have it, Member Swank, but I don't know if everybody has it. Mm-hmm. You can see some of the back and forth, I guess, in the in how we got the feedback from the Shade Tree Commission, and then ultimately modified those changes. So that's the overview. If you want to get into specific elements of each of the sections, certainly I can do that.
Before we go to the public, you mentioned the word nimble, and then you mentioned treating the commission more as we treat would they need to meet, or could it be a conversation and still comply with sunshine laws?
I think it can be a conversation, honestly, because they're not regulating, because they're not having to approve or deny something, and instead they're providing feedback. Ultimately, the entity that is approving or denying is the Planning Commission, and they absolutely have to comply with sunshine laws. And so, the intent would be there would be ability to have a back and forth very early on, by email, a couple members who's available. In many cases with a lot of our boards and commissions, some people may not be available during a certain period of time, and so how can you render if you don't have your because they're volunteers, right? And so, I think a good example is with the Arts Parks or the Recreation Advisory Board. In a lot of cases, the Parks Director will reach out and ask them questions. What do you think about an idea? And they'll provide feedback over email and advise on things. And I see the Shade Tree Commission functioning in a role like that.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Members of the public.
Hello, I'm Mary Reed. I'm affiliated with the Athens Arbor Day Committee. I live at 83 Maplewood Drive, so near East Side. I love living right in town. I was able to walk up to the meeting tonight, something I really value, and it's just one example. I walked by the Procoast Hotel to get up here. And when that hotel was built, one of the things that happened is they put several large shade trees along Carpenter as part of the landscaping ordinances and the requirements. And then about a year or so later, they kind of just quietly took those trees out, replaced them with this kind of something between a large shrub and a small tree that's not going to be a shade tree ever. So in my experience, our landscaping ordinance is really not being sufficiently enforced as is. I am aware of the back and forth that has been happening in the last few weeks with the administration and the Shade Tree Commission. And in my opinion, I think both sides have actually been working in good faith. And I think we do have a better document for that, and I appreciate that. I don't have a lot of clarity as to why it's proposed to take away the actual authority from the Shade Tree Commission to approve landscaping in developments. I am hearing some things like nimble and efficiency. But democracy is not really designed to be efficient. It's designed to be accountable and transparent. And I'm worried about losing some accountability and transparency when the Shade Tree Commission no longer actually has authority. And I know we only have 3 minutes, so I do have other concerns, and I invite anyone who wants to talk further about it to reach out to me directly or Athens Arbor Day Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanna Sokol. I live on Franklin Avenue, and I am a member of the Shade Tree Commission. We have 2 certified arborists on the Tree Commission, and the Planning Commission has 0. The Tree Commission is a group of knowledgeable volunteers, but we have a very narrow scope. Removing approval from us and giving it to planning would only add more to their full plate. So they will have more work, less canopy knowledge, and less canopy experience. And I want to know how that could truly benefit the city and how that code change is actually justified. I would like to invite the city administration to start attending our Tree Commission meetings. I think that would be a great start moving forward with this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gene Dugler. I'm a renter here in Athens on Central Ave. I'm also an ISA certified arborist, and I've been on the Tree Commission for about 2 years now. I want to thank the city administration for their cooperation revising these code changes over the last few months. However, I want to make it clear that I firmly oppose the Tree Commission losing regulatory approval authority over new developments. To put it clearly, losing approval authority would weaken our capacity to enforce code as it is and fulfill our sustainability goals. Therefore hurting our ability to maintain our urban canopy, which is one of our cheapest and most effective sustainability assets. The Tree Commission is not an obstacle to development. In my time, we've never declined a developer from coming into town. We've only ever advised on better landscaping plans, prevented non-native invasives from being planted, and ensured planting requirements are fulfilled. The approval process as it stands is not perfect, but we're not the problem. We're a group of volunteer experts serving the city's sustainability goals, and we want to support refining the development approval process while ensuring that our tree canopy is prioritized in decision-making. To me, this conversation is about more than just a small line of code regarding the tree commission. This is also about the character of our city, the nature of land use in the city, and a vision of the future for development in Athens. What do we aspire to be? We have the opportunity to be a leader in sustainability that prioritizes one of our greatest natural assets. But taking away our regulatory authority is a step in the wrong direction. Again, these code changes would make the Tree Commission less effective at enforcing code, ensuring development fits our community, and maintaining our urban canopy. I'm also personally concerned about overreach by the city administration, especially when it comes to making decisions regarding development in the city. Centralizing regulatory approval power under the Planning Commission, which both the mayor and safety service director sit on, seems to me to be an unnecessary and undemocratic consolidation of power. It's my hope that following these discussions, we can find a more sustainable path forward that doesn't involve taking away the Tree Commission's regulatory authority and our only authority to protect and maintain our urban canopy. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Lorraine McCosker, 59 Elmwood. I am a 22-year resident of Athens, and I have a master's in environmental studies and taught at OU for 17 years. And I had the privilege of working with the city. Students would do projects and do evaluations of the tree canopy and street trees. It's well documented that the canopy has declined, and I think we all know this, living in the city and having seen the decline of these trees, as well as the lack of real clarity on how to go about having these trees replaced. I was just informed a couple of weeks ago that this city does not have a stump grinder, therefore they can't plant trees. I'm using this as an illustration, as it's not clear, like, what are our real goals with street trees in this city. We know that they're critical for many reasons and for cooling processes. We're seeing climate expansion and heat. The UN just declared that we've missed our 1.5 Celsius limit on climate change. So these are all critical things. I'm not sure why the city is doing this, wanting to take the regulatory authority away from the Shade Tree Commission. And I fear for the lack of transparency. I just don't feel like we're having a lot of transparency with this administration on these issues. A couple of things on this. I was looking at the code, and so I'll write people my comments and send literature about this. But for instance, the pollinator program, they are changing that so there is no educational component. And that's really strange. We need to educate people. Science is all about educating and acceptance or non-acceptance and then action. The other thing I'm real concerned about is the development, removing any kind of authority and development. And I'm very concerned that this is being taken away from a commission that has a science background and put in the demands of the Planning Commission, who do not have this science background. So 3 people on there, along with the mayor and the safety service director. So I hope that I will be sending literature about this. It's well documented. It's economically important to have trees, and it's important to have oversight on what the city is doing in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public this evening?
Yeah. So my name is Tristan Kinnison. I am the chair of the Shade Tree Commission. I live at 88 Central Avenue on the west side. And yeah, there's been a lot of talk about this. I do thank Andy and the administration for kind of allowing this back and forth on this. But really all I think that has been accomplished is trying to make this less bad. I still do think that this loss of approval power is bad. I do not support it. You heard everybody's reasoning before me, and I agree with just about everything that's been said here. One of the things that I don't really agree with is Andy's characterization of this as making us more nimble. I think all this does is allow the city to push us to the side, to allow us to not have FaceTime with developers, to allow us to be sent an email and not heard from again. If that, in the past, Joanna made the point, we have trouble getting anybody to our meetings from the city administration. And in code, we are required to have the mayor or his appointee at all of our meetings. And I would say maybe a quarter of them, maybe half of them this year, we've had anybody from the city administration. So we've constantly had communication issues trying to make known issues that are well known to us. So at this tree meeting we had last week, Glenn Matlack gave a talk and pointed out that we have had a large, probably one of the largest trees on Court Street, dead for 2 years. This has been brought up at 4 separate Shade Tree Commission meetings and told to city administration, and nothing has been done about it. There's been no communication. One of the big things is there is no point person in the city administration or the city staff that we can bring these issues to. I've talked to Andy a lot about this, and we're hoping, I think they're hoping that, hiring this environmental coordinator position will alleviate all that. But you heard all of the work that they will have to do in terms of mitigating, stormwater runoff and mitigating our fresh water supply and our wastewater supply, adding on, care of the entire tree canopy to a probably already overworked position that will be a new hire, does not sound feasible to me. So losing this approval, losing us as a point person, losing us from the table does not sound like a good option at this time. Rob made a great talk about checks and balances. The Zoning Board of Appeals will not see these new developments in that same way. We can be a check and balance on some of this bad, or potentially, non-constructive development in our city. So having a check and balance on the environmental side as well, I think is really valuable and really useful. And that's what we risk losing. We risk alienating some of the experts, like the premier experts
Sir,
in
could
the
you
city.
wrap it up? Your time's up.
So that's my thoughts. We risk losing a lot in exchange for, no gain. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again, Ken Lankus, 34 West Washington. I just want to speak from my experience as being a part of the Athens community. I'm originally from the suburbs of Albany. For 46, almost 47 years. I remember when I was very young helping my father to plant the trees that are in the Johnny Appleseed Park. And I've always heard and seen in the paper and the media the Shade Tree Commission involved with decisions regarding the city. I think it's extraordinarily important to, keep them as, a voice for the trees, for the environmental health of our community. To me, from just what I've heard tonight, I'm not familiar with the specific language of the code change, but it sounds to me like, there might be some communication issues that can be solved between the administration and the Shade Tree Commission. I don't see any reason to remove their ability to, to, you can't build a new hotel without putting up this many trees. We have to protect our tree canopy. It's important for the wildlife. It's important for our air quality. It's important for so many reasons. They have the scientific background for it. I think this could just be very much more easily solved with trying to figure out communication issues. Maybe not it's necessarily a thing for the new environmental person, but at least having communication. It's the easiest and most difficult thing on the planet. So let's just do that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Laura Wallace, 30 Sunset Drive. So the trees, they make Athens, right? I don't know how about you guys, but I go out just about every weekend to enjoy nature. I know this is not about what you're talking about specifically, but let me make a point. So as a resident for 21 years here in Athens, I just want to say that I am very much against moving the tree commission to an advisory-only commission because and I'm going to echo a few of the points that people made previously, like somebody just mentioned, we just passed the first catastrophic climate tipping point. We need all of the ability we have to capture greenhouse gases. And what I worry about is what many of the other people said here. If we don't have the checks and balances that an advisory committee of the Shade Tree Commission can provide, I'm wondering if we will be able to have, like somebody else said, the accountability and the transparency here in town so that we know what's going on, so that we can make sure that the people who are the experts, who know their task best, I would like for them to be in charge. Excuse me, it's been a long day. Anyway, so my question actually is, what does the Shade Tree Commission need to be better supported? That's kind of my main point.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Members of the,
Hi, I'm Jeanette Ammon. I don't actually live in the city, but I work in the city and lived around Athens County for over 30 years, and I pay taxes in the city. One of the draws for people to come to Athens and move here is because of the shade and the large, beautiful trees. It helps hold soil in place, and I feel that, when Walmart came in, they didn't do all their plantings that they promised. I feel like we need more regulation, not less regulation on the tree, and more power in the tree commission than reducing it. I feel like, I'm also a real estate agent, and any property that you go to sell, if you have a tree, it's valued more as long as it's not hanging over the house. Shade helps reduce the cost of heating and cooling. Same with the whole city itself. If you have enough shade, then the blacktop is not going to be emitting so much heat, so much toxic fumes. I don't know if you notice that. I'm very sensitive. There are other things we can do, but trees are a big part of that. The formula to help preserve our natural environment, clean our air. And I'd like to see all the blacktops painted white. That would help a lot too. And not having emissions, not having people idle their cars. But those are other issues. Basically, I feel like we need to support the Tree Commission and not take away their decision-making power. I feel like we should put more money towards regulating the tree plantings, get that stump grinder so they can replant trees. There should be funds going to, and these people are volunteers. There's no reason to eliminate their position. Thank you.
thank you.
Hi, I'm Noah Klaus, 123 East State. I just want to draw one simple point while I'm up here. Does anyone in this room want to raise your hand if you know everything about Athens city government? We shouldn't have any hands going up. But I really don't think that we're in a position where we want to be making legislation where we're discouraging volunteers from participating in city government, especially volunteers that have professional experience that are willing to offer that. And I, as somebody who's lived here now for 27 years, my entire life, I'm worried about a continuing continuing pattern of power consolidation. We really need all this city legislation and city government stuff is very complicated, but we really need volunteers who can communicate with the community and be able to translate this stuff back. And more importantly, you know, we see that the Planning Commission has certain wishes for these changes to the Shade Tree Commission, but all of our attention only gets on it when, like, all of us are here taking our personal time out of our days to come here when something bad might be happening. But, like, where are we getting wrapped in order to make the positive changes we want on this legislation? Where's the community member input on this stuff? And I do think that as a younger person living around here, the city government and, you know, its facilitation, it's on the community members too. But we need to have a more open conversation, and we need less decisions in more people's hands. Or maybe more decision in more people's hands. We just need more people involved. And less people making all, like, a higher concentration of the decisions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brenda Searcy, temporarily staying with a friend on Congress Street. Somebody brought this to my attention, that these proposed law changes, it's new to me, so I was just looking at it, and I don't know a lot about these issues. Have not been active in the city government or the Shade Tree Commission, but it's clear to see from these changes that what it's trying to do is to take the power away from the Shade Tree Commission. And I just want to say all the tree proponents of keeping the power in the hands of the commission said made sense to me as a resident. I've been here almost 4 years, love it here. And one other thing that I noticed in the changes is that it's also, the commission had the power to, basically, if a tree is taken out by a business, they can charge them for it. They can say, this tree is worth this amount, charge them for that, and it looks like that's now being made optional and put in the hands of the planning committee. So maybe they pay for the tree, maybe they don't. I thought that was concerning, as well as just taking the power of decision away from the experts. Again, everything the folks said made sense to me, and I like trees, so.
Thank you. Okay. Members of the committee.
Who wants to start? All right,
Go
I'll
ahead.
start.
Yeah.
Okay, so I went through and made little notes throughout. I'm not going to nitpick in front of everybody right now with little things, because I'll just drive you crazy. So I can send that along to folks about little things that I don't think make sense to me. But, and also, there's some parts that are unreadable, so I don't really know exactly what it says. There's kind of some little digits that instead of actual letters. So that would be nice to get a clean copy, so we really know what it says. I think that, as has been repeatedly said, my first question to the administration is, what are these changes intended to accomplish? What's the problem that this is intended to solve? We're not going to make ordinance changes unless you feel there's a problem you need to solve. And I have yet to hear that. What's the problem we're trying to solve? You're on the hot seat there, good guy.
I think Director Stone, very clear in that in his opening statement, but do we need to hear it again?
It wasn't clear to me.
Okay. Director Stone, if you Wood?
All right, if I can start out to let everybody know that I don't hate trees. I promise. My family farm is part of the American Tree Farm System, has been since 1970, when my grandfather joined it. I've planted thousands of trees in my lifetime in that capacity, and my father and family has spent thousands of dollars in fighting invasive species and maintaining a good environment. And so I want to make sure that people understand I'm coming at this not from a position of I don't want trees in the city and I don't want a canopy in the city, because it's not remotely close to true. So if I could set that aside. Related to the problem that I'm attempting to address, there's no other commission that has regulatory authority other than the Planning Commission, and that's established by the ORC, and then obviously the City Council. This is the only commission that we give regulatory authority to for volunteers in the city. And in an attempt to streamline processes, and particularly development processes, one of the things I'm charged with is delivering services to the city, and services require tax revenue, and tax revenue requires development. Certainly if we didn't have, and it's not ideal, big box stores are certainly not ideal, but sure, everybody goes to Walmart and everybody goes to Menards, and they spend a lot of money there, and that money pays for income taxes, and those income taxes pay for police officers and firefighters and street maintenance and tree maintenance and parks and recreation and code enforcement. That income tax revenue is what provides that. And the only way that we're going to continue to be able to grow, and we're getting ready to talk about the budget in a moment, is to have development. And in an attempt to streamline the process to allow for good development to occur here, to continue to grow the Athens economy, which it has not at the pace of, when compared to the rest of the Ohio economy, this is an attempt to streamline the regulatory process, not to remove the standards for what people need to do, but to streamline the process. And so this is my one attempt. If you don't believe that this is the right way to do it, I'll go back to business as usual. Thank you.
Other members of, yes, sir.
Yeah, so I serve on the Tree Commission. I'm the appointed member of council. Excuse me. Been a long day for a lot of us on that body. I've heard overwhelmingly from the public against this. Gotten tons of emails. And a lot of people showed up at the commission last month to also voice their concerns. Haven't heard anybody outside the administration say they're for it. I do think that the administration really cares about the environment. I truly believe that. I think the mayor is very proud of his record on that, and rightfully so. But there will come a time that he is not here, and that Andy isn't here. There'll be somebody else. So removing the current situation and the current people from it, I think, is important. One of the other things I've noticed or was brought up that wasn't brought up today, I understand that manufacturing issues were exempt, which includes data centers. Data centers suck up a lot of water, which we have, which is why a number of people, why a number of them are moving here. There's one at Lancaster. So those are a growing concern, and exempting that is a big issue. Frankly, I think we should table this. I don't think we should move forward. I don't think it's a good choice of process. And again, I do think, I take the administration at their word and their past actions that they are pro-environment, but again, I think that long game, this matters, and so I think we should table it.
So, So a couple, we can't table it tonight. We don't vote in committee meetings. Go back to your point, though, about manufacturing. As part of the give and take back and forth, that was taken out. It is now back in. Manufacturing and business zones are back, and that was part of the compromise to this. Director Stone and Tristan included me in the email discussion. I was a follower. I was not a part of that discussion, but as chair of the Planning and Development Committee, Director Stone, and I agreed with him, that it was important that it was abreast of this, but that manufacturing thing it does apply. It does apply. It's on page, looks like 370109. And correct me if I'm wrong, Director Stone, that's back in, is it not?
The thing that prompted that initial change was we don't have a lot of M zones in the city that are viable. There are M zones in the city, but like one large one is in the middle of the wildlife protection area, so you can't really do anything of intensive manufacturing there. Another one is the area in the south side of East State Street on the far eastern end of the city, and that's pretty much built out at this point with retail. So really our M zones are very limited. We got a little bit of M out on West Union Street. We got a little bit of M on Simpson Avenue. And so there's just not a lot of spaces. And so we had an instance where an entity had attempted to expand and they had a hard time meeting requirements. And so we thought, well, since we don't have a lot of M, let's remove those requirements from the M that we do have. But like you said, during the back and forth, we said, we'll stick that back in. So.
Member Thomas.
I read through the email chain, and I did see that manufacturing is no longer exempt, being put back in. And I wondered, as I was reading it, if talks just continue to find more middle ground, and if there's a way to maybe incorporate a Shade Tree Commission member into the Planning Commission and still maintaining the commission, just to have them having a vote in the Planning Commission and having the face-to-face. But I have the biggest concern I think I have with removing the authority is what Member Wood said of when Director Stone is not here, or if, Mayor Patterson is not here and we have future administrations who, don't care or, want to see changes, what happens then? That I think is probably one of my biggest concerns. I think we've had a somewhat contentious past with the Shade Tree Commission from years ago, if you've been here long enough. But I watched, all of the last year's meetings and tried to read up more. And I think they're right. I don't think they've declined a single, that I'm aware of, any business. I know we hear Menards thrown out a lot that they weren't going to come, but they're here. So I don't think that was that big of a point for them. And I do appreciate the work the Shade Tree Commission does. I noticed, I guess, during these discussions driving up 33, that there's a car dealership, I think it's around Canal Winchester, that I never really paid attention to, that's just a huge car lot, but recently they've renovated and they added islands of trees all throughout their parking lot, and it looks so much better. It really, you pay more attention to it, and obviously it's going to provide more tree and add to their canopy, which, for all the science that we have heard is a good thing. I think if we could just keep talking, or the administration's willing to keep talking and find some more ways to incorporate the knowledge that we have available in our city, that would be really nice to see, and just keep kind of working that way. Because I'm only getting emails that are not happy.
If there was going to be continued conversation, I would want to be clear as to what unresolved issues still exist. And having followed all of these emails and everything, can't say I saw any.
I'd be happy to address that. Thank you. Okay, so one of the things, as many of you know, I was a professor and I taught social welfare history and policy. And one of the things I taught my students was you can pass a law, but if people don't follow it, if the leaders don't follow it, it doesn't happen. Enforcement doesn't happen. So, like, for example, when my son first got to OU and he went to his first bar underage with his, fake license, which I found out later. Anyway, the guy that was at the door, who was the bouncer, was the guy he went to high school and graduated with, who was younger than he was. So, we know what the law is about that, and sometimes, kind of there's some loosey-goosey things about that. The reason I bring that up is because in my conversations with people about this, what I'm seeing is, as it stands now, it's not being implemented. So that makes me concerned about how much enforcement is going to happen at all if they're advisory. Because there's not a regular person who attends the meetings to hear what they have to say. And as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, they have an opening and they haven't allowed, the administration has not put a new person in. These are important things. So if they're regulatory now and you're not following it, then turning it into advisory is basically what you're doing now, sort of, not even. And my other concern is how much delay or problems have you really had with development with what we have in place now? Is that set it back for a week? Do people get mad? Has anybody turned down moving to Athens or starting a business because of this nasty regulatory group? I'm not hearing good answers to that yet.
One of the things that Director Stone brought up, which I agree with, of all the boards and commissions we have, this is the only one that has regulatory authority. The only one. Planning Commission is governed by the ORC. The BZA is governed by the ORC, Ohio Revised Code. But all these other boards and commissions are advisory only. I served on the Recreation Advisory Committee. I would consider myself an expert in recreation, but I understood that I was advisory in nature. So we did a little research. City of Gahanna does not have a Shade Tree Commission. City of Oberlin does not have a Shade Tree Commission. Village of Yellow Springs does not have a Shade Tree Commission. The latter two, I would assert, are as progressive, if not more so, than the city of Athens, Oberlin, and Yellow Springs. Mount Vernon in Ohio does have a Shade Commission, but they are advisory. City of New Lexington does have advisory. Duties include authority to study, investigate, advise. City of Fairview Park up by Cleveland does have a Shade Commission. They advise the city. City of Marietta, they make written recommendations. City of Kent does not have a Shade Tree Commission. I don't think that one's true. The Village of Ottawa does have a Shade Tree Commission. They advise. Findlay, Oxford, I hate to bring up Miami, that's our next football game, but they do have one and they advise also. I often hear from this council, well, what do other cities do? What do other cities have? Regulatory, no. Advising, yes. Personally, I have a little bias in the authority of a non-elected entity. And I'm not talking just about the Shade Tree Commission. And people talk about citizens of Athens need this, the citizens of Athens needs that, we need more decision making, we need to spread it out. You know what? Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4, president, at large, 3 city school board races, not one contested race. So if we need to spread out this decision making, folks, jump in. I posted on 3 Facebook pages, the Near East Side, the Far East Side, and the West Side, encouraging people in the month of July to run for Athens City Schools School Board. Not one person did. So if we want more decision making amongst all the people, we need to get involved. Paul jumped in. Paul contacted me 2 years ago. How can I get involved in the city? I advised him to join, put his name in the hat for the committee, and he got on the BZA. He paid his dues. He's been to just about every city council meeting. He doesn't even get a chance to get elected till next Tuesday. He's gotten involved and he put his money where his mouth is. But back to the issue at hand. We're kind of out of the ordinary here in having a Shade Tree Commission that has regulatory authority. Now we talk about, well, what happens when Andy's gone and the mayor's gone? If we were to make this what is being proposed, an advisory body, and we find out it doesn't work, or the next mayor and service safety director we get is cutting down every tree they can find, We as a council have the authority to restore it. We have the authority to restore it. So if enforcement is the issue, and the first speaker said that they had a concern for enforcement of development landscapes, and Solveig, you said you have a concern about enforcement, then that's a conversation the city council needs to have with the administration, staying in our respective lanes of legislature, administration. Worst case scenario, if they're not doing their job, we can always ask for a writ of mandamus, but I don't think we're anywhere near that, and I think we can work through this.
Okay.
Member Wood.
I don't think us being leaders is a bad thing. I'll add that the mayor frequently points out that we have the lowest impact in the city, due in large part to having a good canopy, and I think we should stay the course.
I'd like to add to that.
Members,
Yeah,
yes, ma'am.
I'd like to add to that. You know, we're the only ones that have an electric bus.
Elected bus.
Electric.
Oh, electric bus.
I will vote for that bus.
Yeah, well, I pointed out to
I
people
too
that
vote
come
for the
visit,
bus.
vote for the bus. So I think that's like shows that we are trying to be ahead of the game, not behind the game. So I am concerned that since I don't think we're living up to what we intend with the Shade Tree Commission now, so weakening them at this time, I don't think is a wise course, because I think the trees really add a lot to the value of moving here, having a business, in the health, the safety, all of that. But I think it's an economic boost too. I think that really adds people wanting to have businesses here. So anyway, I'm standing with that for now. And I won't be here next Monday, so I can't do anything about it.
Okay. Any other comments by members of council? I think, in Clerk Walker, correct me if I'm wrong, we have kind of touched on 9, 10, and 9, or 3702. Or do we need to do that? I could do it. Yeah, well, yeah, and Director Stone referenced that in his beginning comments there. Okay. All right, so what I'm hearing from I think members of the committee is you would like a little more discussion on this. With your permission, I will have a conversation with Director Stone, let loop Tristan in on this, and certainly have this ready for the next committee meeting, if that's, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, just a point of order. I think we heard a little bit about the native and pollinator-friendly front yard program and education, but I'm not aware of what the cutting weeds amendment is in this subject matter.
Okay, noxious weeds. Basically, I'll read it. It adds a couple words. No person, whether the owner, lessee, agent, tenant, or other person or entity having charge or care of land in the city shall permit lawn grass or noxious weeds to grow thereon or on the adjacent right-of-way to a height in excess of 8 inches, or to mature seeds thereon, or fail to cut and destroy high grass. And here's what we add. Invasive plant species, or, and just those 2 words, and 3 words, invasive plant species or noxious weeds when notified by the code officer or designated to do so. And then we add this: all landscaping materials should be kept in a neat and orderly appearance, free from litter, refuse, debris, and we add these 2 words, invasive or noxious weeds.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Oh, good. Sounds good.
All right, so that covers the 4 points. Mr. President, would I have one last thing I'd like to say? Be short. I'd like to apologize to the audience for my comments earlier. That is something we've come to see all too often from the current occupant at 1600. I don't ever want to be associated with that person, and what I said is out of character and inappropriate for this setting, and probably more importantly for the people that look at it at home, including my 3 granddaughters. And additionally, Member Thomas, that was very unprofessional of me to make those comments towards you, and I offer my apology.
Accepted, and I would extend the same.
Thank you. Me too. That concludes whatever this was, planning development.
Well, I'm glad everybody is kissed and made up. Let's move on to Finance and Personnel Committee, which I am the chair thereof. And I invite members McCary, Wood, and Clotfelder back up the dais.
Folks, don't leave. We're going to be talking about your tax dollars here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a lot of numbers and things, figures, formulas and stuff.
Trying to drive them away.
I believe in you guys.
Josh likes this type of stuff.
Josh likes it short and sweet.
You came to the wrong place. Let's get everybody settled down here. Anybody need a drink of water?
Yes.
Yeah, actually.
Next time I'll bring my own. All righty, we have several items under Finance and Personnel. The first one being the 2026 budget appropriations. I believe we have a draft. I believe that all members of council received it, draft version this morning. I'll turn to the administration to fill us in.
Sure. Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. The document you have in front of you is our first crack at the 2025 operating budget. It's put together as quickly as we were really able to do so through iterations back and forth with the various departments, work with the auditor's office to populate the personnel lines and the debt service. I'd like to say that there's still probably some changes that need to happen to this as we go through the readings. We tried to bring it forward today so that you had ample time to go through the regular order and that you could pass it on December 1st for 2026. I think historically the council's gone a little later than that. And so what we try to do is give some wiggle room in case, for whatever reason, you decide that we need to delay it or there's an amendment or something along those lines, that you could go a little bit longer. You're going to see if like you were to compare it to previous years, you're going to see it's pretty modest. It's a decrease in outlays in the general fund specifically. There's some increases in outlays across a lot of the other funds, but in some cases, those are due to external funding that has to get appropriated and go through our lines. And so, like for instance, probably the biggest, most glaring one is the appropriation and authorization, rather, that both the appropriation and authorization that you did recently for Project 330, which is the massive sewer improvements project with that zero interest 30-year loan. That loan money has to get appropriated and come through because it's an outside. It's an outside funding source. We don't have that money in the bank, and so we can't encumber it and carry it over from year to year. So it has to get appropriated again, and so you'll see it in the 750 fund under the transaction class 500 on this particular budget. There's a $16 million item in there, and that's specifically that reappropriation of that thing that you just appropriated and authorized here a few weeks ago. So, but by and large. Another example of that is Welcome Home Ohio in the 250 fund. You appropriated $2,024,000 at the beginning of this year. We haven't spent that money yet. That money stays at the Ohio Department of Development until such time that we proceed to do it. And so we can't encumber it at the end of the year, so it has to get put back into the budget. And that would be another thing that wasn't in last year's 2024 passage for the 2025 operating budget. So those are the kind of significant changes. I need to dig a little closer into a couple things, specifically just to validate that debt service is correct. Throughout here, although we do have things put in the different places, the main debt that we're carrying is in the fire station debt fund for the new station, the pool, the parking garage debt, although that's getting paid down pretty far, a little bit in water, and then the wastewater is the main one. But that we need to look at personnel costs a little bit more as well. Like I said, a lot of these are running a little less than last year, but I want to just look a little bit closer. but I wanted to get something in your hands today. The one thing that I would ask is if there's analysis that you want. I think last year I did a one-pager that showed some changes over time. If there's analysis that you want, if you want to send it to me or ask me here, I can do my best to pull it together and work with both the auditor and treasurer to produce a product that would be useful in being able to understand this. The one last thing that I would note, and it's not on the agenda this evening, but it is relevant to the budget. We had some discussion about the income tax mix, and from time to time we'll change the income tax mix to say where the portion of the general revenue that comes in, which fund it's going to go to. You know, is it going to go to the general fund? How much is going to go to the street fund? How much is going to go to Parks and Recreation? How much is going to go to transit? And then recently we identified 2% of that as that revenue comes in to go to the medical fund. And the reason for that is that the medical fund was getting eaten faster than we were contributing to it based on the just medical costs. Medical costs are pretty significant, and as a state or as a self-insured entity, you know, those costs we pay up to $110,000 specific deductible that people have. This is another bad year. Where we've got 5 people over the specific deductible already and another 7 that are approaching it. So, you know, that takes a big chunk. You know, we can have the best wellness program in the world, but, you know, a few heart attacks and a few cases of cancer, and you're in a situation where you're really blowing through that money. And so that 2% that goes from the general revenue as part of the income tax mix into the medical fund is an effort to get that 865 fund balance healthy enough to be able to have 6 months in reserve. And we're not there yet. What we do normally, historically, before we decided to do that and add that 2%, and we still do it, is to pull across all the departments a certain amount per employee. This budget reflects $23,500 per employee coming out of each of the funds that have people allocated against them to go into the medical fund. So that's an increase of $1,000 from last year. I am of the opinion that we need to increase that even more. Instead of taking percentages from the general revenue. And the reason for that is that there are a significant number of people that work for the city that are paid for by proprietary funds, water fund, sewer fund, trash fund, are being the big ones, and then to a lesser extent from like the community center levy and a few other places, some court aspects. And the trouble with doing money out of that general revenue, that 2% in the income tax mix, is that it basically lets those proprietary funds off the hook for that contribution. And you know, you're not allowed to take proprietary funds to pay for a non-proprietary activity, but it's bad practice to use general funds to pay for something that you've got proprietary revenue to do. So I believe it is in our interest to raise sewer, water, and trash rates accordingly to make sure we can shore up the medical fund for the employees that are paid out of those places, rather than try to take that general revenue and do it. And so that's probably something I spoke some with the auditor, deputy auditor, in advance of this, and we're not prepared to recommend changing that tax mix now. But I think that it's something that we really ought to look at as we go into 2026, as we start to approach that 6 month in reserve threshold, and see about changing it. You know, I think that's a responsible thing to do, because you can't control income tax revenue, right? The income tax revenue is what the economy will support. And as I've mentioned before, the Athens economy is not growing as fast as the rest of Ohio. And so our income tax revenue has been relatively stagnant compared to, it's increased, but it's not increased at the rate that some of the inflationary pressures have, whereas you can control water rates, you can control sewer rates, you can control trash rates, and increase them accordingly in order to be able to do that. So like I said, I'm not prepared to make that recommendation yet. But that's something that probably in the first couple months after the beginning of the year we may look to do. With that, what questions you have about specific items, and what information would you like me to provide from an analysis perspective?
Member Wood?
Thank you for that explainer and lead in. One of the things I think you mentioned, and pointed out, but I just wanted to get clarity on. The water fund plant and the sewer fund plant both have sort of extra lines next to them, and I was curious why that was.
Yeah, sure. So in each of the water fund and sewer fund, there are 3 sub-funds, basically. There's water maintenance, water admin, and water plant. So water maintenance are if you can try to put this in easy to describe manner, but water maintenance is the people out in the city with the water in the lines, and the water plant is the water making the water at the plant. So we differentiate those 2 activities, and same for the wastewater side.
Sorry, I wasn't clear. I mean, in the budget total column, there's it says.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
And then there's 3.7.
Yeah, that's a combination of those 3. So.
Okay. So that's it's just the.
Yeah. Take 3 totals and then add them together.
Perfect.
Stick
Yeah,
one to the
thank
side.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Member McCary.
Thanks. I'd just like to request some additional commentary on Director Stone's mention that the administration has taken care to decrease the expenses from the general fund, and I know that's very important for us. I was hoping you could just share a little bit more about what we're trying to do.
Yeah, like I said, I need to dive, closer into we have reduced personnel ultimately across the general fund in a couple different places. The mayor's office shrank a little bit, so looking at the first line, if you look at last year, we had $1,024,000 in the personnel cost for the mayor's fund. This year, we're asking for $977,000. So there is a decrease there, and that's in part due to decreasing personnel. I think. Looking across the rest of the, the funds, there are quite a few other places where we've decreased a little bit. Subcomponents of the general fund, and we've counted the personnel we have, and we assign those costs to personnel primarily, and they're lower than last year. And so, like I said, I'll do some comparison specifically, like in police, and some comparison in fire, which are the 2 major cost drivers for the general fund compared to last year, and let you know. Of note, court has increased, which is something that has traditionally, or at least recently, been a challenge with costs associated with the court. It's now almost 9% of the general fund. Last year it was 7.4% of the general fund. So it's something to keep an eye on over time.
Member Wood?
Yeah. Sorry, Beth doesn't.
I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. I guess just as a general suggestion, I really appreciate the fact that you're trying to protect the general fund, but raising the rates of utilities is going to be really damaging for people on fixed incomes.
Yeah.
And I just think a lot of people are struggling right now financially, so that could hurt them.
Yeah, I agree. You certainly don't want to do that. A large percentage of the population that lives in the city of Athens doesn't pay taxes, right? Doesn't pay income tax because it's not on earned income. They're on fixed income, and so they use the services without contributing to those taxes. So, yeah, I understand. It's certainly nothing we want to do to gouge anybody and just take in money to take in money, but. If we want to maintain staffing levels for police and fire, which are the 2 primary things that come out of the general fund, I mean, it's well over half of the general fund pays for police and fire. I think 61%. We kind of got to protect those tax dollars, and that would be my recommendation. Would be to raise water and sewer and trash rates a little bit more in order to protect those tax dollars and allow us to continue to fund those important services.
I guess I would just ask that it not be seen as the automatic solution, and see if we can find anything else that might work, because it will hurt some people.
Right.
Okay. You 2 fight it out.
Mike always wins the courtesy standoffs. What do you attribute the increase for the court to? And also for those that, self-included, don't know quite how these things, the sausage get made, does each department send you a number that they're requesting every year? How do the numbers work up the chain?
Yes. So every department builds their own budget. The majority of the costs, for court specifically, from last year's budget compared to this year's budget is in personnel. They have a minor increase in supplies and services of, it looks like maybe $12,000, but personnel is about $104,000 more than last year. So, and again, they build their own budget in that regard and send it our way. So.
Member Carey.
Thanks. I have two questions, or one request and a question. I'm hoping that the City Safety Services Director could comment on our current staffing levels within police and fire, since we know that those officers do cost quite a bit, but we also want to make sure that our city is properly staffed.
I think we're down one patrol officer in police right now, and we're going through the hiring process in order to get that, and that's based on current staffing levels. I think I'm staffed fully in fire right now, but I have several retirements that are imminent. One, I think, in December, and then I have a couple in the beginning or the first half of next year. And so that creates conditions where you have probationary firefighters that you bring on, basically the backfill a fully trained firefighter, and so there's a period of time while they're getting up to the level that they need to count for full staffing and such. So, I don't think we're hurting per se, but it's something that we always keep an eye on. We want to stay ahead of hiring so that we've got people in the pipeline.
Would you be concerned about a scenario in which we decreased the number of police or firefighters that we had?
Yes, absolutely.
And then my last question is just one on the equipment that these departments use. I recognize that this year and in recent times we've invested quite heavily in our fire station, our new headquarters, and lots of equipment, some new equipment for police, but are we anticipating any opportunities to save strategically on equipment needs next year?
I guess I'd have to get into specific. We always go after grant funds whenever we can. It seems as though in the public safety world, there's not a lot of grant funding or any grant funding for people, but there tends to be for equipment. So we try to search for that when it becomes available. I think the fire chief just applied for some radio equipment. The big cost drivers ultimately are vehicles. The apparatus, the fire apparatus that you use. The council already has approved us to purchase the next pumper truck, which takes 3 years to build. So you've already done that, and I'm going to come back to you for an appropriation when it's ready in I think 2027, and say, hey, remember a few years ago when you approved that we're going to buy this? It's ready now. I need an appropriation. Cruisers, we currently are in that lease program for our cruisers. Not entirely happy with the mechanism that is kind of how it's worked, because we haven't been able to rotate those the way we wanted to, but that's the big cross driver for equipment on police, and they use them, right? I mean, they're out and they rotate and they're on the street a lot, so we go through a lot of miles on cruisers.
Thank you. Public.
I only have one comment to make on it, just touching on what Director Stone had said. I just met with the auditor's office real briefly this afternoon to ask them any thoughts. And what you had said, debt service was one thing they said they were still going to look at. There were a few things in there. So as you look at this, some of those numbers could change. In the personnel lines, when you do go across, the biggest, if you were to compare from last year, you would see police and fire lower, and that's because the overtime numbers are not put in there just yet. They're still working on those. So again, because that was one, it stood out to me this afternoon, like, wow, that's a big decrease. Simply because some of the overtime hours are not put in there yet.
Yeah.
So that'll be
I wonder what that was.
right. That'll be a jump. So just anticipate seeing that probably by next. I would assume by next week. But I just wanted to make clear that there's still a few things that they're working on. They want to get those numbers in there.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Member Klopfelder.
That makes me think of kind of a follow-up. Now that we're fully staffed in the firefighting area, which is the first time I remember that being the case, are we seeing less overtime now that there are more people there to do the work?
We are. We're gonna have to run into the same problem, though. Next year as we attrit the people and we bring on more probationary firefighters. I think I have one firefighter that has some military duty, or no, I've got two that have some military duty coming up, and so they'll be absent, right? And so there'll be holes in the manning that ultimately will have to get backfilled. They only have to get backfilled when we are below 4 on any particular time. So, given a typical shift has 7. On duty, and if there's 2 or 3 that are out, you can still get by with those 4 in a non, like, now if you have a big fire, then you call everybody in, right? But otherwise, that's minimum staffing. It's when you go beyond those 4 that you have to start running overtime to cover the shift. And with vacations and sick and comp time and Kelly days and all the things, there are occasions where pretty quickly you can get into an overtime situation.
Who? Yeah, I'm going to do that. I still remember my duties. I may be getting old and senile, but I'm not there yet. Public, which also includes members of council who are up here.
Alan Swank, 40 Townsend Place. Have bothered Member Reisner all weekend to get this, and was very glad to get it. Director Stone, I have to say, I was even more glad, if there's such a grammatically correct way to put things, when I saw these numbers. I think it's very important that the public know that the administration has done some, what I would consider, serious belt tightening here. The general fund, now granted we don't have the overtime for police and fire in here yet, but the general fund budget as proposed right now, without those modifications, is actually down 9.6% from last year. It's also down 2% from the previous year. That's some serious belt tightening. And I think the administration needs to be commended for that. Anybody who's following the news today realizes that property taxes are the #1 topic of conversation in this state, and taxes like these get lumped into that. But I do have some questions. You addressed one of them with the police and fire without the overtime being in there, because at this point in time the decrease is 14.2% in personnel costs for police and 18.3% decrease for fire. My concern in the personnel area are two, though. Lands and buildings, we have a reduction of 25.3%, and if we don't have an answer tonight, that's fine, but I'd be curious. We had a big ceremony at the Armory this weekend to raise some money for art and all of that, and it was lovely for those coming, but all that work that was put into landscaping was done by volunteers. And if we're down 25.3% in personnel for lands and buildings, it makes it even more difficult to maintain this city in an attractive manner, and I would hate to get to the point where we're relying exclusively, or no, I shouldn't say exclusive, we'll always have lands and buildings people, but more and more on volunteers. My wife and I are members of Project Plant. We're the youngest at 70 years of age. So plug for volunteers. Someone mentioned court, and this is very, very concerning. Personnel costs in the court are up 9.8%. But what concerns me the most is down in the second section, diversion. Last year, the amount allocated for diversion was $45,000 plus. This year, it jumped to $236,000. That's a 5-fold increase. And I, for one, would like an answer as to what that is all about. Director Stone, I believe you addressed the Athens Enhancement Fund of $2 million, and I know for a fact that you addressed the $16.1 million for the sewer fund. But all in all, a 9.6% decrease at this point in time from what we asked last year is something I think we need to recognize. Those who were part of this appropriation draft should be commended for. But I would like to know about this court thing, because that's a huge jump from $45,000 to $236,000. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Going once, twice. Back to council members. Now that you've heard from the public and the administration, what are your thoughts? Yes, Member McCary.
I think it would be helpful to discuss council's role as it applies to the approval of the court's budget specifically. And I would welcome any comments on that from members of the administration.
Give them the bad news.
Not really. I mean, we have very little control over the court's budget, as I think most people know. There are certain positions within the court which are completely under the court's jurisdiction, and there are some positions in the court that we do have some control over. Director Stone, I have that correct?
You do, and actually the next topic is the 2026 staffing ordinance, and there's specific court positions that the legislature controls, and there's specific court positions that the judge and clerk control, and set both their wages and their numbers. So it's very much a push-pull, and the legislature doesn't have complete authority over the court. There's instances of where the judge can, write a journal entry and say money for this activity, and then you have a constitutional crisis, right, between the two branches of government that say, because that never happens at the federal level.
Not anymore.
So yeah, I mean, I wish I could give you a better answer to say, hey, you should do what you tell them to do, and that may or may not happen. So it's definitely a tension that's built in intentionally between the judiciary and the legislature.
With the example of the diversion program specifically, what would be the best manner for council to get some information about the reason for the increase in cost?
Probably the City Safety Services chair should call the judge and ask him.
Okay.
Or I can go and look at the numbers and try to get back to them.
Good try, yeah.
I'll dial it for you.
I will say that some of the diversion programs are directly grant funded.
Yeah.
And so what we're probably seeing is either a grant that has expired or they haven't received yet, or, I mean, it's, the increase is there. So we should get an answer.
I wrote it down here, and I'll get the answer. You don't need to call him.
I think that y'all got to it.
Oh, okay. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that the major source of income for the courts, actually there's two sources. One is money from the general fund the city provides. The other is from fines levied against criminals. I don't know how else to phrase a person who broke the law, but that's basically what they are. The judges in the past that I recall, like Judge Bennett, didn't really hesitate to levy a fine against someone and thereby bring in income into the court. Our current judge is rather loath to do that based on the idea that the majority of the people that come before him are pretty much low income and have very few assets to begin with. So levying a large fine against them, one is just basically squeezing blood from a stone. You're not going to get very much. And so what does that leave you to do? Well, jail time or something. That source of revenue has been limited. So the only other recourse he has then is to come back and say, well, the law says you have to give me the money that I want, because if you don't, like I say, I'll just do a general entry and I'll write myself a check and pay myself anyway. So that's sort of where things are at. It's not like we can look at any department within the city and say, well, your budget is over, it's much too much, you must look at it and try to trim a little bit. So it puts us in a bad position as members of council. However, there has been a time in the past when the court wanted to hire a person, and that person, the salary that he wanted that person to have was extreme. And unfortunately, it was one of those positions that the council had control over. And we came back and said, well, based upon what that person is supposed to do and the amount of responsibility of looking at people within our own departments who have a reasonable amount of responsibility like that, they would be paid this much, and that's what we offered, and that's what he took. So there are ways, but I think the best way is, like the Service Safety Director said, is just talk to him. That's seems to work in the past.
As
End
a
of lecture.
point of context,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of September, the court had brought in $92,000 roughly $93,000 in court fines and $350,000 in court costs. Those are the two major sources of revenue into the general fund for the court. There's other sources of revenue for diversion things, for the computer funds that are added on to the court costs and such. But
yeah, the Ohio Supreme Court for a long time was giving a lot of money for automation and electronic equipment and so on, but those funds have been sort of cut back now. So, Any other comments on this issue? Let's move on to 2026 staffing, administration.
all right, in front of you is the staffing ordinance. There's only one change from the staffing ordinance as of right now, and this is specifically in the code office. And so David Riggs has indicated his desire to retire in 2026. What he's asked to do is to go into a part-time status sometime in February and assist with some of the things he does now that's particular. These particular to Habitat, floodplain, administration, some of the finer points of development review, and some other things. And then the mayor's identified an appointment for someone to backfill at this point at 3/4 time. And so what we're asking is basically to change the staffing ordinance effective February to go to a .75, a 3/4 time director, and then a development specialist, which is a permanent part-time or a part-time development specialist, so under 3/4 time. That Dave will stay in that role until he plans to retire in the summertime.
Members of the public, any comments on this? Members of council who are out there? No? Committee? Any comments on this change?
Quick question. Alan Swank, 40 Townsend. So when Director Riggs does retire, what happens at that point in time?
Well, then at that point, we'll still have it on the books unless, you change it midway, a part-time person there that conceivably we could hire somebody else into that. I don't anticipate doing that. What I might do is come back to you and ask about moving the appointed position to full-time. But as it stands right now, we're asking for the person to be a 3/4 time person.
So 3/4 and a 3/4?
3/4 and less than a 3/4.
Less than
part-time, yeah.
How much less? Half?
Probably 10 hours a week.
So that's 25%.
Yeah.
So full position.
But, when we write it in the staffing ordinance, you put .73, right, as a part-time, because that's the highest they can work without getting benefits. And so for planning purposes, you got to put in there. What I really think it'll be is around 25% time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Treasurer, you have anything? Okay, thank you. Now let's move on to 2026 non-union compensation. Administration.
All right. We're going to ask for a 2% cost of living increase for non-union personnel this year. While inflationary pressures have certainly has everyone wishing they could ask for more, or wishing we could ask for more. We just don't think it's fiscally prudent to do at this time. Of note, we're in negotiations with the fire union at this point, and we do have to try to keep our non-union folks who are the leaders across the city competitive. And people wanting to do that job, so you got to be careful if you constantly depress raises for them versus union raises. But we think it's appropriate going into 2026 to ask for 2%. Of note, this is the year that we're supposed to be doing a pay study. And the HR director has been working on that, going through. And while we don't think we're going to have it's just simply not ready to move forward at this point. Where we say we think we need to move the pay band for a particular position, and it probably won't be ready before the end of the year. He has identified a couple people that are significantly under what the market has. like significantly under what the market has, and he may come, in a few weeks, and ask for those individual people to move through the pay band some to get them back into market range. But by and large, we're not going to ask this year, but our ordinance says we'll do a pay study every 3 to 5 years, and so he is going through that process. But we're not going to ask to move those bands at this time.
Out there in the audience, anyone questions about this? Members of the committee? Member Clockfelder? You look like you had a question.
No,
No?
at the moment.
Okay. Member Wood? Member McCary?
No, thank you.
Very well. Let's move on to 2026 third-party health insurance administrator.
Non-union benefits, I believe, is next, right?
Oh, yes, it is.
It is, but we're actually not asking for any change in those this year. So
that was easy.
So you'll just carry the ordinance from 25 on the 26th.
Okay.
It'll stay into effect.
Well, I'm glad we had this opportunity to discuss it.
Sure. It's just something that's on the counter every year, right? And so we're just not asking for changes. For the 2026 third-party health insurance administrator, we're recommending to continue with the same Employee Benefit Service Center. The only increase is from this year for fees. It's actually not even in their fees. Their fees remain the same, which is $24.50 per employee per month. It's the PPO access fee, which is what gets us access to the network. Remains the same at $11 per employee per month, and then the only increase is 50 cents for the RX, the drug access fees, and that's from $6.50 a month per employee to $7 per employee per month, and so that's really the only change in our administration for the third-party administrator going into next year.
How much will that increase?
Well, let me do the math. 12 times 180 times 50 cents. You ever do public math fast? 12 times 180 times 0.5. $1,080.
Audience, any questions on this? Members of the committee? Member Clockfelder, you do have a question. I knew it.
I have a comment on this one, yes. In this era of constantly increasing healthcare costs, I really commend the city for only having $1,080 in increase.
Well, that's in the administration cost.
Even so.
The healthcare, yes, I agree with you. And that, we're happy with EVSC. They're providing the level of service we need. I wish they could figure out how to make people less sick.
Yeah.
And make doctors charge less. Because that's where we see those big cost drivers.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to 2026 group excess loss medical insurance. I think I got that right. Administration?
Right. So every year we bid our basically our stop loss insurance. So you remember I talked earlier about the specific deductible where every employee is covered up to $110,000 with city funds, and then if you go in beyond that, which we've had 5 so far this year, and we anticipate having a few more potentially before the end of the year, the stop loss insurance kicks in, and so we bid to out to the market for insurance providers to provide that stop loss insurance to the above and beyond that specific deductible. Had 2 bids this year. One is the existing carrier that we have called Certus. The other one is MLB-RE. And of the 2, let me get this right. Annual total attached point. Certus is less. There is going to be an increase compared to this year for them, and it's about $150 for single employees per month, as opposed to the other bidder, which was $30 more than that. an increase of about $300 for an employee plus spouse. The other entity was another $80 more than that. Same for employee plus child. The increase is about $250. And then the other bidder was another $100 beyond that. And then for family, it went up $450, and the other bidder was another $220 beyond that. So the bottom line is it is going up for us. And then, but of the two bids, this is the one that is better, and it's our existing carrier, which is Cirrus. And I think really that's just I mean, if you think of it from an actuarial perspective, and you look at our group of people, and you look at the people that were sick this year, and how sick they were, and what our costs were, that it's only natural that our increases are going to go up. Just like when you crash into people with your car, your insurance rates go up. When you have a bunch of people that are sick, you end up getting higher rates. So that's what's our situation. But it is better than the other bidder.
Audience, questions? Members of this committee? Member Wood?
Having a medical insurance to cover our medical insurance feels like an insurance protection racket. It's like, it's a real nice group you got there. It'd be a real shame if something happened to it.
Yeah.
I guess that's the state of it, but yeah, it's kind of that.
I still think we're saving quite a bit of money as opposed to if we were fully insured. And what I mean when I say fully insured, that means that like we don't have a self-insurance pool where we administer our own funds and they're just a part of a network, but we actually went to Prudential, or you pick the company, and we just paid premiums for everybody. I think if that were the case, we would pay more money. The self-insurance does give us a level of control that and most large employers are self-insured because of that. But they can't have catastrophic claims that cost you $1 million and actually breaks the bank. So that's why you got to buy that reinsurance. Kind of like they have the big stop loss insurance for like home providers that end up coming in after a hurricane, and MetLife may insure a bunch of houses in the Gulf Coast, but then MetLife runs up against their top, and then the catastrophic insurance comes up behind them and helps keep them staying solvent. So that's similar to what this reinsurance does for us. And if you want to get into the finer points of delivering healthcare, I could talk to you all day about it. I learned a lot in this, and it'll make your eyes glaze over, but it's fascinating stuff.
Boy, don't we?
You can do it on your own time. Let's see. I think there's no further questions on that topic. Let's move on to appropriations. $30,000 to water fund, 740.635 supplies for maintenance. Administration?
I can speak to all of these if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to move things along. So the three appropriations and EPW, water, sewer, and streets are all for maintenance activities basically at the end of the year. So there are some utility bills that are paid out of those as well, at least for the facilities on Kern Drive and West State Street. But by and large, it's just maintenance materials costs primarily, and being able to get to the end of the year and deliver the services that we need to deliver. Of note, on the street one, we're not asking for a new appropriation. We're asking for a transfer from already appropriated money in the TC 500s, but you have to approve the transfer. So that $30,000 will help with their supplies and services through the end of the year, and we'll take it out of already appropriated money just to try to protect that unappropriated balance. And then the one for rec, and this is what is relevant to that next item, the then and now certificate. We received an invoice from 2024 from ChargePoint, which is the entity that we runs basically the back end support for the electric vehicle chargers at the pool. There's 3 of them that you pay to use when you're over there, and this is the back end basically. We make money on this, so. The city, the rec department does make a fair amount of money, quite a bit more than the fees from ChargePoint to run that back end. But it seems like they lost their bill from 2024 and then just sent it to us. So part of it, I'm like, too bad, so sad, you forgot to bill us, so, but they said they would shut us off if we didn't, pay them, so, we're still kind of deciding whether or not to pay them. We'll see if they'll call their bluff, but the bottom line is Catherine Ann needs the money appropriated because she runs a pretty tight budget, and this is not an expected expense. And then the fact that it was 2024, that's why it requires the then and now certificate. And I would ask you to consider at first reading, just because we're getting close to the end of the year, consider suspending these so that we can get these into the budgets.
Audience, any questions? Members of this committee, ever with? McCary?
Just one comment. I don't expect it to be resolved this evening, but I'm curious about how to prevent this in the future in terms of if there are annual bills that we expect. Is there some opportunity to create a checklist to figure out if we've gotten it on time?
You know, for every one that we come across and you see, there's probably 3 or 4 dozen that we know are coming and that we incorporate into the annual budget. So occasionally we miss one. Here's an example, you know, because they didn't send them. Yeah, you don't expect to get a 2024 bill in 2025.
Exactly. Thank you.
Makes sense. Member Cloudfeller, any questions on this?
No.
Well, I believe that concludes Finance and Personnel Committee. I believe we're adjourned.